Revelation chapter 17, the judgment of the great whore. God is not forgotten. In the 16th chapter of the book of Revelation, or the 16th chapter, presents to us a series of great historical events, which ultimately will lead to the complete annihilation of spiritual Babylon. The Word of God has promised it. The facts of history have given us a clear interpretation of the events which have already transpired. The sixth vial brings us to our present generation. Now, attempting to interpret the events presented in chapter 17 puts us on a course which will demand diligent use of sanctified common sense and consistent application of the established metaphors. In other words, we're going to tread very carefully because we're now beginning to start dealing with the future. We're on the precipice of it, but we are now. We've walked history up to the sixth vial. Now we're trying with sanctified common sense, with consistent application and understanding of how metaphors have been used. We're looking towards the future, and we're looking at the character of institutions and hopefully seeing a lot of alignment. Remember, Jesus said, I told you this aforehand, so that when it comes to pass, you may believe. When it comes to pass, you may believe. Not when it's still in the future, you may speculate and sell a bunch of books. We're going to see in this chapter that the great harlot church is finally judged and burned with symbolic fire in Europe. This calamity will occur at the very hands of the very kingdoms which had given her allegiance for century after century after century. They are destined to unite one more time, which they are already uniting and have united for the purpose of destroying this most horrendous institution. Christ is thus judged. Verse 1. And there came out of the seven angels which had seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, and I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, and having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, and having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness and her fornications. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, the abominations of the earth. Let me share with you some, just a couple, I'm going to not share all of them, some quotes by some very preeminent men of God, scholars, Protestants, like Walter Scott, Bishop Wadsworth, John Wesley, maybe Adam Clark, and in the work, The Present Reign of Jesus Christ, this information is there. But let me just share with you some observations. Walter Scott, in his work, The Exposition of the Revelation of Jesus Christ, when comparing what he calls the harlot of Satan and the bride of the Lamb, he states this: in every point of view, these two women are set in sharp contrast. The harlot is subject to Satan, the bride is subject to Christ. It is one of the vile angels which shows both to the wondering seer. A wilderness, in chapter 17, verse 3, and a great and high mountain, chapter 21, verse 10, yet to come, are the respective points of observation. Great Babylon comes out of the earth. Its historical origin is human. We read this in Genesis chapter 11. Its latter-day development is satanic, as shown in the Apocalypse. The New Jerusalem descends out of heaven. Its native sphere, and it's from God. Its blessed source. Satan decks the one, and God adorns the other. Eternal ruin is the portion of the harlot. Eternal glory, the happy lot of the bride. I have quotes here. John Wesley, in his notes on the New Testament, on Revelation 17 and 5, where it says, on her forehead was a name written, whereas the saints have the name of God and the Lamb on their foreheads, mystery. He said, this very word, was inscribed on the front of the Pope's mitre till some of the reformers took public notice of it. Babylon the Great, Benedict XIII in his proclamation of Jubilee, and it goes on and on. They actually used to have the word mystery on the mitre. The mitre, which if you turn and look, it looks like a fish head that these guys wear. Well, you need to go back and read Alexander Hislop's The Two Babylons and understand the god of Dagon, the fish god of ancient Babylon. Remember, this is a type of Babylon and a type of Egypt, a type of Sodom and Gomorrah and all this filthiness. Adam Clarke makes an interesting statement on verse 5. And upon her forehead was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. This inscription being written upon her forehead is intended to show that she is not ashamed of her doctrines, but publicly professes and glorifies in them before the nations. She has indeed a whore's forehead. She has refused to be ashamed. Verse 6 of Revelation 17. There's much more in the book. Verse 6. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered. I marveled, is what he's saying, with great admiration. This vision of Mystery Babylon the Great blew John away, basically, to put it in our vernacular. There's only one body claiming to be Christian church, claiming to be the Christian church to whom this will apply. God is not forgotten. I think it should be pretty self-evident. Summing up these glorious pages in history, Ganesh stated in his book, The Approaching End of the Age, 5th edition, page 212, it has been calculated that the popes of Rome have, or indirectly slain on account of their faith, 50 millions of martyrs. She's drunk with the blood of the saints. No wonder John looked and was stunned. Verse 7. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore did thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. Let me put that in context for you. The mystery of the woman, the false religion, and of the beast, the government. The 7 heads and the 10 horns, Europe. Verse 8. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. The beast that was pagan Rome. And is not the fall of pagan Rome. And yet is papal Rome. Remember, this paganism should have died at the mortal head wound delivered by the Gothic invasions and the trumpets. But Daniel saw that out of that wound, a little horn was going to arise, and you've seen the history unfold. Verse 9. And here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains. Well, the 7 mountains, or technically, the word oros should be there, and that is like a mountain as lifting itself above a plain or a hill, not a great epic mountain, but more of a hill rising above a plain. The Palatine, Quirminal, Aventine, Cilian, Viminal, Esquiline, and Jaculine. There's your 7 mountains. Pictures of Rome sitting on those mountains or on the coins that you've seen and will be seeing in this presentation. Verse 10, and there are 7 kings. Basilusius is the word there, or foundations of power. 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th and of the 7th, and goeth into perdition. And we already looked at this. 7 forms of government had fallen. Then the emperors fell at the time of John, and then out of that the beast came, which was of the 7, and went into perdition, perfectly fulfilled. The beast that was and is not and yet is in the book of Revelation is the 3rd appearance, is the 10-horned beast. Now, what we have happening now, it's manifesting itself in the EEC, the European Economic Community. There's reasons why, and this began, of course, with the Treaty of Rome in 1957. This is all being pulled together, as you're going to see, for a reason. However, they are embracing a very socialist mentality, and they are going to turn on this papal beast, as you will see. Rome even had a feast called the Septimonium, the Feast of the 7 Mountains. And on coins of John's day, I mean, there's so much information on this. It's out there. We don't really need to expound much more on it because we've already touched on it. But let me just, for the scholars, one more little emphasis here. You can go in the Approaching End of the Age, page 162, Guinness talks about these distinct forms of sovereignty. Quote, the great Roman power did actually exist under 7 distinct forms of government, enumerated by Livy, Tacitus, and historians in general as such. Rome was ruled successively by kings, consuls, dictators, decemvirs, military tribunals, military emperors, which were the Caesars, and despotic emperors. Guinness went on to say, and look how accurate he is, 7 kings, or accurate our Lord is, on page 170. 7 kings formed the first head and lasted 220 years. Consuls, tribunes, decemvirs, which was the council of 10 magistrates, which lasted from 451 to 499 BC. And then they drew up what was called the Law Code of the 12 Tablets. Then we had dictators, were the next 4 heads. And they governed Rome in turn for nearly 500 years. 65 emperors followed and ruled the Roman world for 500 years more. And now the man of sin, the Antichrist, or the little horn, is to be the last, the 8th, and the most important head of this same Roman beast. The 4th beast of Daniel 7. Now, remember John that said that this eighth form would arise and go into perdition. And we know the story. After the last emperor was toppled, this one who was of the seven, it rises. And today it claims the title of Pontifex Maximus, which was held by all the Roman emperors. This is not a mystery. This is really kind of simple. And goeth into perdition. The Greek translation of the word perdition is apolia. This is the same word that Christ applied to his betrayer Judas. He called him the son of perdition, apolia. That's in John 17, verse 12. This condemnation, this is important you grasp this. This condemnation is apostolic in its connotation. It denotes a wicked and rebellious apostolic authority, a false apostle. How marvelously has the book of Revelation applied this term to the eighth form of Roman government, the papacy. It claims to be apostolic. Technically he claims to be the only living apostle on earth. Verse 12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto him. Now, the angel is reminding John about the historic cycle and transition of Rome pagan to the 10-horned kingdom of Rome papal. The 10 horns were presented in chapter 12, verse 3, and the transition in chapter 13, verses 1 through 5. These 10 kings or kingdoms did not exist in the time of John, but should later receive authority in the same hour or they're going to do the will of this resurrected beast. For 1 hour, the Greek word is mia hora, translated 1 season. We have already seen the carnage produced by these 10 horns, and the papal beast which has governed them was their mind, basically. Millions fell prey. And shall make war against the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they are with him, are called chosen and faithful. Verse 15. It said unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations. Remember, we've referenced several times this verse of Revelation 7:15 explaining what the waters of symbolic prophecy are. They are, and it's a clear pattern of nations. Okay? Not literal waters and stuff. Verse 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. They shall make her desolate and naked, and eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God had put it in their hearts to fulfill his will. What is happening is in Europe right now, God is putting it in their hearts. We're not going to stop it. His will will be fulfilled, and these 10 horns, these 10 European nations, they will destroy the Roman Catholic Church. This beast is red now. Scarlet color. Its nature's changing. Began to change with the French Revolution, communism. I already mentioned the Treaty of Rome in 1957. You have your common market. Rome's trying to ride this red beast. However, it's going to turn on her and rip her to shreds and devour her and burn her with the symbolic fire of God, whatever all that means. Verse 18. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. If you will remember and look back in Revelation verses 16 and 19, you will see that this great city is called Babylon. And this chapter has made it clear that Babylon is synonymous with Rome, her spiritual cities. We've got books out there written by futurists try to tell us that America is the Babylon of this prophecy. God help us.